What is going on, everybody? This is Mike from the Last Corvette. So this video is probably a number one question that I used to be asked when I used to be heavy into boat repair. And that is, which outboard should I purchase? A two-stroke or a four-stroke? A lot of times, obviously, the outboard was attached to a given vessel. Center console, a go fast boat, sometimes even a big cruiser style boat, bow rider. Very, very popular till this day. Outboards are utilized in shallow waters. They're super easy to trim up and essentially get yourself into like sandbars. They're also used in brickwater, saltwater. The reason behind that is because of the cooling system and also how easy it is to flush them, essentially flush the salt or the brick water out of them. You don't have to worry about that, in fresh water. But yes, they're a lot easier to maintain than like a inboard style boat with a stern drive, V drive, straight drives, whatever you have. So let's start with the obvious. Over the years of servicing, maintaining, rebuilding these engines, going back from that original question, which one is better? It all comes down to service. Service, service, service. If you have a good track record of service, either from a individual, a marina, receipts, right? That's a really really good start. Unfortunately for boats in general, there's a big gray area when it comes to service. Some boats look awesome from the outside as far as the outer hull, the gel coat, and then like the guts are just like completely gone. And then some boats look crappy on the outside, but the guts are really good. So it always comes down to survey and inspection. That's what I used to do a lot, specifically in the off season when people were in between boats or shopping for boats. And then the third one is hours. People have this perception where a low hour boat or a watercraft is better than a high hour watercraft with high hours. Let's say 800 plus hours, 1,000, 2,000, whatever the case is. That's the furthest from the truth because I've seen boats with very low hours. Even newer boats, they use scan, right? You actually use a scan tool to scan their computers to figure out what the hours are. No, it's all about service and maintaining it because I've seen boats with low hours, newer boats that were completely junked out. I mean, ready to go to the scrapyard or in need of thousands upon thousands of dollars of repair. I've also seen boats with super high hours that were like in top-notch condition, inside and outside. The reason behind that is if you use something on a regular basis, you're going to maintain it. You have to maintain it to get those hours. And yes, some of those boats or watercraft had, engine rebuilds or engine replacements, drop-ins, whatever, short blocks, long blocks. But at the end of the day, people were taking care of them because they were putting hours on them. So don't look at watercraft as, oh my God, it has 800, 1,000 hours. I'm going to walk away from it just because it has high hours, even though you actually like the watercraft, or it has a much better price compared to a lower hour, same style watercraft. Keep that in mind. Now, the big difference between a two-stroke and a four-stroke is two-stroke is a lot easier to maintain. You don't have physical oil in the engine that you have to, drain and replace, refill. You don't have an oil filter. You still have fuel filters. You will still have a gear case, which will contain gear lube. We'll touch on that a little bit later on as well. Four-stroke, of course, has more parts and components that you have to replace, like the oil filter, the actual oil in the crankcase. You have to drain that, refill it, change the filter out. Same thing with the gear case. There's still gear lube in either a two-stroke or a four-stroke. But yes, I guess if you do it yourself, there really is no difference. The only difference is just the parts you have to buy. But if you, will say, rely on somebody else to do it, yes, they will charge you more money. When it comes to hours, right? So we'll kind of go back a step. Hours. People think that two strokes are a ticking time bomb as far as just, I maintain it, I do this, I do that, and they just explode. No such thing. Most two strokes work two ways. They're either oil injected, so you have a gas tank Then you have a oil tank, and then what happens is when you start your engine, the two mix together, and you get oil injection, right? And oil is very important for two strokes because you need to wash down not only your crankcase but also your top end. That's the most important one, to cool it off, lubricate it. If you're not doing it, then what's going to happen is you're going to score up your cylinder walls, you're going to essentially chew up your piston rings, you're going to lose compression, and that engine will indeed need a full rebuild. The second way to remedy that problem is pre-mixing fuel and oil together. I used to do that a lot on jet skis, specifically Sea-Doos. So your 90s, mid 2000 two-stroke Sea-Doos. Sea-Doo had a really, really bad design, specifically in the beginning when it comes to the oil injection. And I'm going a little bit off topic, but it will all make sense here in a second. So Sea-Doos had a nylon gear, and the way Sea-Doos worked is they had a single fuel tank and a single separate oil tank. So that oil tank, two-stroke oil, would always wash down your crankcase. So it would just basically recycle itself from the compression and the pressure of the engine, pushing it in and out. And then the second portion of it would also wash down your top end. That's the most important. And that nylon gear would either skip a tooth or just chew itself up, and you would be out there enjoying yourself, having a great day, not knowing a thing because there's no warning light. There's a warning light for, if it works, for low oil, but there's no warning light or a sensor for a failed oil pump. And essentially you'd be out there going 30, 40, whatever miles an hour. You would overheat that top end because it's starving of oil. There's no oil being delivered to the pistons, and you would essentially seize the motor up, and that's when people would switch to premix. Now, I used to run premix on Sea-Doos specific because of their oil injection. And oil injection is great because oil injection is very easy. You buy the two-stroke oil, you fill up your two-stroke tank, then you pull up to either a gas station or a gas dock if you're on the water. You put in your 87 octane, let's say, and then you're off and running. With a premix, you have more steps. Once you get it right down to the science, it's pretty easy to do. But essentially, you need to know exactly how much fuel you have, how much oil you need to put in, and then you mix everything together. And usually what would happen is, if you're not doing it properly, you would have either not enough oil, which would lead to the same issue, starving the engine of oil and burning up your top end, or putting too much oil in, and you would see these two strokes smoke like crazy and fall out their plug. So that's why most older two strokes would have a spare set of spark plugs, depending on how many cylinders you have, like tucked away somewhere, just because of that reason. So yeah, you could put too much oil in. It wouldn't hurt anything besides, that's the last thing you want to do if you're out fishing or running around the lake. You fall out your plugs and the engine doesn't want to start because your plugs are essentially wet and full of oil. Four strokes are easy to maintain as well. Yes, you have your oil filter, you have your oil that you need to change, the gear lube. Now, the gear lube is also very important, and I'll touch on it a little bit. When I used to service boats, I had two types of customers, and there's just two types of people. Some wanted their boats serviced as they came out of the water, so essentially in the fall, get them ready for the spring. And then some customers wanted to service them in the spring and just essentially just winterize them in the fall. And a lot of it has to do with where I live, specifically in Michigan, right? Colder winters, people have to pay for storage, they have to pay for their bills, whatever that they accumulated over the summer months, essentially gas bills, right? Or marina fees. But regardless, I would always check the gear lube or the gear case. And the reason you want to do that is because just like on inboard, that's water cooled, you want to make sure there's no water intrusion. And I would always pop the drain plug, make sure there's no water. Usually water would settle to the bottom. Or if it was a big water intrusion, you would get milkshake. And in that case, I would drain it. If I didn't see any water intrusion, I would just, let it rip for a little bit, put the drain plug back in and just let it sit. But if I would see water come out first or milkshake, I would drain it completely, tag that motor, contact the customer, and tell them that we'll indeed need to service the lower leg or the lower unit of their outboard or even stern drive. And that is a very, we'll say, quick insurance policy, because if you find that water intrusion, yes, there's probably a chance that there are some issues or some damages already in process to your seals, your bearings, output shaft, for example, spines, whatever. But if you let it sit over the winter with water in the gear case, just like the engine, it will expand, it will mess up your bearings, it will also crack your outer case and inner case as well. And then you're looking at a much higher repair when it comes to money. So we'll send this video towards the very end, and we'll talk about the main differences between a two-stroke and a four-stroke, right? Why did everyone switch to a four-stroke? Well, four-stroke runs a lot cleaner as far as the smoke goes, how it idles, also the two-strokes have they're essentially they're RPM heavy or happy. They like the RPM. They have a lot more torque than four strokes, especially out of the hole, getting going. Two strokes will perform a little bit better, sometimes a lot better, depending on the size of the engine, than four strokes. But once you're up and moving, four strokes on the high end or the top end of your RPM range will produce more horsepower, more top speed than two strokes. And that's where the separation begins. Two strokes, even when properly maintained, they don't like to run at high RPMs, even though they're made for high RPMs, but you're putting a lot of wear and tear on two strokes, specifically if you have, let's say, an underpowered boat. So you have a larger boat but a smaller horsepower engine, and you always have to get on it or get into the RPM range. That will wear down your engine versus a four-stroke. Yes, they're a little slower getting out of the hole, but once you get going, they will outrun a four-stroke. Like I said, they're quieter. And of course, the big one between the two-stroke and the four-stroke is fuel consumption. Four-stroke will always utilize essentially its powers, magic powers of a four-stroke cycle engine, to use less fuel compared to two strokes. Two strokes, specifically in the higher range, they will get very thirsty and they will use up a lot of your fuel, which means, hitting your pocket and going back to the gas dock or refilling the fuel tank again. Then four strokes are just a lot better, specifically at idle. They can idle a lot cleaner without worrying of following the plugs. They also can run a lot longer because of the fuel consumption compared to two strokes. But at the end of the day, the way I'm going to end this is two-stroke, four-stroke, as long as you're buying a good serviced motor, reliable motor, as long as you maintain it, you're going to be fine either way. Talk to you guys later.